SEC Chair Gary Gensler approved BlackRock's Bitcoin spot ETF. We're here with James Altucher, obviously, to talk about what that means for crypto. James, you've been calling for this for a long time. You've been calling for sensible crypto regulation so that the big money can come in, and you actually pinpointed this date today as the day that they're going to announce this. So congratulations. But first off, what does this mean for crypto, and what are you thinking right now?
Well, it's very interesting because when you say I've been calling for this a long time, I was on CNBC at the end of 2017 talking about regulation on Bitcoin. And back then, regulation was considered an evil word. Like people thought regulation was the same as, hey, the US is going to make Bitcoin illegal. And I said, no, regulation is a good thing. It means the US, and this is on CNBC, there's videos out there. Regulation means the US is taking this seriously, or will, and this is in 2018. I was saying we want regulation because big institutions will not be able to legally buy it until they know it's a safe currency. People don't realize money isn't just invented and there's all sorts of the US dollar is the reserve currency of the world because it is the most trusted because there's thousands of rules and regulations like the Federal Reserve has to disclose every month how much money exists, how many dollar bills exist, how many, what's the corporate debt, what's the government debt that people the US is totally transparent so people know they can trust the dollar or not trust it depending on the information that's disclosed. So the US government can't allow something called a currency to be legal but not disclose anything. Like regulation has always been important. Today, finally, is the day really we've been waiting for. Now there's more regulation to come and there's many more things that will happen after this, but we just wanted to know, hey, is it legal for me to buy Bitcoin? Am I going to be okay? And
Yeah.
and the SEC is essentially saying grudging, they don't like saying it, but they're like, yeah, I guess it's okay. You could do it now. We're not going to punish you or anything. Like, and a few weeks ago, the IRS listed some rules about Bitcoin that, again, some people took it negatively, but I took it very positively. But this is the real big deal, which is the SEC. Gary Gensler has been saying all along, Bitcoin's a fad. Bitcoin, there's so much fraud and corruption in Bitcoin. Meanwhile, by the way, in the past couple of days, we've seen the SEC Twitter account hacked and the SEC website released the Bitcoin news before the market closed. They're not allowed to do that. It was an accident and they had to take it down and re-release it. So people thought there was another hack. By the way, during the hack, this is not just like a fun little tweet that said something. Tens of millions of dollars were lost by people who
Yeah.
were margined out of their positions when it was spiking up and then when it was spiking down. And so money gets that's like almost the largest amount of money lost in crypto is done by the SEC because of the SEC tweet. But look, this is a very important moment because here's the biggest thing. We're just talking about Bitcoin now. Forget all the other, there's a lot of other tokens that are extremely useful and extremely valuable, and maybe will even be more valuable than Bitcoin at some point. But we're just talking about Bitcoin here because that's what this news is about, is a
Right.
Bitcoin ETF. And just specifically, what it means at a very basic level is now you can buy Bitcoin on the stock market. You never could do that before. Yes, there were funds that were kind of matching the price of Bitcoin, like GBTC and the company MicroStrategy because they own so much Bitcoin, but there was not a true ETF which is supposed to exactly follow the price of
Yeah.
Bitcoin. So now you can finally buy real Bitcoin on the stock exchange.
That's huge.
That's huge. It's never happened before. Bitcoin's 15 years old as an asset class. It's worth $1 trillion. And now finally, 15 years later, it's you could buy and sell it on the NASDAQ, the New York Stock Exchange, whatever. So this is a big deal. And it's a bigger deal because Gary Gensler, the head of the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, well, stocks are securities, they finally said yes. He was forced into it. The court said you had to do this. But then you had big institutions. Like, let me just read off some of the institutions that
Yeah,
were
that's a good
approved
idea.
today. BlackRock, which, by the way, if anyone doubted there was going to be an ETF, that those doubts Like for me, those doubts were over once BlackRock got into the business because go back, let's rewind to 2009. The US government had, it was the Great Recession. The US government had to figure out what to do with trillions of dollars worth of mortgage-backed securities. Guess who they hired to unravel that mess? Trillions of dollars. Who knows how many hundreds of billions of dollars this company made? It was BlackRock. So if anyone was going to get approved, it was BlackRock. So BlackRock, ARK Investments, which is Kathy Woods, Grayscale, which was the closed-end fund GBTC, VanEck, Bitwise, Fidelity, Hashdex, WisdomTree, Invesco, Franklin, Valkyrie. I mean, these are between those guys, they're managing, I would say, probably, I don't know, $3 or $4 trillion of money. And not that all that money is going into Bitcoin, obviously,
No,
it's
but
most
yeah,
it's in the stock market, but these are big institutions, so they knew it was going to happen. And uh, this year, I think people are going to test the waters. I think ultimately trillions of dollars. I think ultimately at least $1 trillion will get into these ETFs or crypto related ETFs. Just to put it in perspective, gold ETFs have about $120 billion in them. By the way, gold had the same problem Bitcoin has. It's hard to buy a brick of gold. And then what are you going to do when you want to buy two or five? Or where are you going to put all that gold? In your basement, like in your garage? Like gold needed ETFs to be kind of taken seriously. So gold has $120 billion in ETFs. I see much more going into crypto ETFs just because crypto for this younger generation that's getting into investment age, people in their 20s, 30s, and so on, they buy crypto as a store of value. They don't buy gold as a store of value. And we
right.
see this even in our own subscription list. You know, and just to cover this a little bit, Bitcoin has to satisfy some of the characteristics of money. So a lot of people think Bitcoin is a store of value. Just like gold, you can't spend gold, but if people put gold in as a way to be safe and diversify away from the US dollar. So that's why gold goes up when inflation goes up. But gold actually has no real intrinsic value. Doesn't mean I'm against gold, but just like the dollar bill is just a piece of paper, gold at its fundamental level is just a rock. You can't do anything with gold. You can't do anything with a piece of paper just because it has a one on it, unless the US government says this is a dollar bill. But crypto, people say crypto or Bitcoin is just ones and zeros. It's not really anything. Bitcoin is an enormous platform, $1 trillion platform for decentralized computing. And one application of that decentralization is currency. But there's over 1 million lines of programming in 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 Bitcoin. And the last currency that I think actually had intrinsic value was barley around 1000 BC. You could eat barley, so people would trade it. Bitcoin you can actually use. So there's other use cases, but this podcast is not about that. The Bitcoin ETF. So again, ETFs mean that Main Street America can finally buy Bitcoin. They
Yep.
they couldn't do it before. You had to use weird exchanges and brokerage firms. Even the most famous ones like Coinbase were hard to use, hard to figure out. Now it's easy. You could call your broker at Charles Schwab and say, "Buy me some Bitcoin finally." And tomorrow, I believe it starts as early as tomorrow, you'll be able to buy Bitcoin for the first time. And look, it's even hard for me sometimes with some of these tokens, figure out all the different exchanges and wallets. And, grandma and grandpa are certainly not going to figure it out, but now they can do it. So what does this mean in the short term? Well, the long term is easy. As more money, as more mutual funds, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds get interested in Bitcoin, they finally have a place to buy it. They weren't buying it before. They weren't legally allowed to. Mutual funds buy stocks. They don't buy pieces of software. So now they can buy a stock that's Bitcoin. Same with sovereign wealth funds. So I would say this year probably somewhere between 50 and $100 billion will get put into these Bitcoin ETFs. Now remember, gold has 120 billion, and I'm saying just within the next 12 to 18 months, 50 to 100 billion is going to go straight into these Bitcoin ETFs.
You're looking at the markets, the crypto markets all the time, but so what does that mean? 50 to 100 billion dollars. You say it's $1 trillion market. You say 5 or 10% more money going into the crypto industry. What does that do for Bitcoin in the short term? I'm talking short term.
Short
I mean,
term.
obviously right now Bitcoin was down a little bit today. New
There,
now
there's,
that
there,
he's
the Bitcoin's doubled in the past two or couple of months. So there's a lot of anticipation going into this. So there's a little bit of buy the rumor, sell the news, but that's microscopic short term.
Mhm.
So short term, let's say in the next 6 to 12 months, uh, Bitcoin has a reasonable chance of getting to 150 to 200,000. It certainly will double from here. It has a reasonable chance of going even further than that. Um, 10, 120 billion or 100 billion or 50 billion almost doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking about an asset that's worth, I guess it's worth about like 8 or 900 billion, close to a trillion.
Mhm.
But if it's put in of, if that money is put into Bitcoin in a short amount of time, don't forget there's no new Bitcoin being created. Bitcoin, there's a fixed number of coins. Even companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, they issue new shares all the time. So the supply of shares of a company goes up, just like the supply of dollars in the US goes up. The supply of Bitcoin will never go up. So the more people who get involved in Bitcoin, and this opens up a huge new worldwide market for buying Bitcoin, that there's no new coins being made, so it's going to drive the price up. So if 10% of the value of Bitcoin over the next year is put into Bitcoin, that could be a quadruple of current prices.
Yeah.
So it's very positive for Bitcoin, but let's focus on real opportunities. And Bitcoin's going to go up, but now the market is forward looking. What's next? What's next is there's going to be an Ethereum ETF. Don't forget, Grayscale was the one who took the SEC to court to make a Bitcoin ETF. Well, Grayscale had GBTC, which owns a lot of Bitcoin, and they also have ETHE, which owns a lot of Ethereum. Not as many people know about that. So, and ETHE has also been going up quite a bit. Ethereum ETFs are the next thing happening. Let me show you one chart. I'm going to share my screen, Doug.
On the Bitcoin front, I mean, it seems like you get 50 or 100 billion dollars. That's a decent size of the market. But those once those are purchased and put into the spot ETF, they stay there until someone decides, mom and pop, whoever decides to sell it. So it's just soaking up some of the supply of Bitcoin that's out there.
Right.
It kind of sets a floor. It seems like from a technical standpoint, sets a floor under the price of Bitcoin.
Absolutely. And like here's the important thing about that. Again, um, institutions have never really been able to purchase Bitcoin in mass amounts before.
Mhm.
Again, nobody wants to tell their boss, I can't help that an exchange called Sushi Swap, disappeared for a day, or Pancake Swap. Like no institutional money manager who manages like $1 trillion wants to hear those words out of an employee. So
Right.
now there's a legit safe way to buy Bitcoin. And this is all going to be new money. And institutions, by the way, the reason companies love institutions and investors is they never sell. They buy because they love the long-term story, the 20-year story, and they stay. So, uh, you know, so many of these ETFs have done the research on crypto. They know it's going to stay. They know Bitcoin. That's another thing that kind of validates crypto as an industry is that BlackRock, ARK, Fidelity, they're all getting involved. They think this, they think they know their research tells them this is a real asset that's going to be important for the world, which we've been saying all along, but they have a higher bar really because they're talking to millions of people. But you know, those institutions stay. And like you say, it puts a floor. The reason there's been so much volatility in Bitcoin in particular since day one is because it was just speculators. It was like day traders back and forth, or it was, you know, individuals, which is great. The ETFs are going to be great for individuals. But most important now, like let's say the Fidelity Magellan Fund, largest mutual fund in the world, their charter is they can only buy stocks. They
Hmm.
couldn't buy Bitcoin before this. Now they can. Mutual funds buy stocks. So, and then they buy a stock, then they forget it. They forget that they bought that. They just sit there forever. So that's why it's another reason why this is a great thing. But this chart that I'm showing you here, this is a 6 month chart. The blue line is Bitcoin,
Okay.
and the red line is Ethereum. So you see, like up until a few months ago, like November, Bitcoin and Ethereum are like kind of side by side. They usually trade together. But look at the past few months. Bitcoin has had its widest gap from Ethereum in years, and that was because there was a lot of anticipation for the Bitcoin ETF.
Mhm.
But now what's next? Market's forward looking. There's going to be anticipation for an Ethereum ETF. So see now here we see Bitcoin, Ethereum starting to catch back up to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And since Ethereum also is very important to know, Bitcoin is more valuable. There is more its market cap, if you will, is larger than Ethereum's, but Ethereum is actually more useful. There are more transactions per day on Ethereum than on Bitcoin, interestingly enough. So in some metrics, Ethereum is bigger. It's more widely used. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We talk about that in other calls. But uh, Ethereum Ethereum has a lot of reasons for people to buy it. And when there's an Ethereum ETF, that is just also going to go through the roof. So now I would be focused on different ways to buy Ethereum, like ETHE, or buy it direct on one of these crypto exchanges, because Ethereum is going to have a nice move upwards also in anticipation of an Ethereum ETF. But not only that, Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum, on December 31st, he has a blog post where he lists the product roadmap for Ethereum. And it's a very detailed product roadmap. But number two in the roadmap, which should occur this year, is called the splurge. Or no, it's called the surge. And it's when they make Ethereum very scalable. So as an example, Visa could process, the credit card company can process about 60,000 transactions per second. The problem with Ethereum, and it's a big problem, Ethereum can only do like 13 transactions per second.
Yeah.
Well, when that surge happens in the product upgrade, which again, it's going to probably happen this year or sooner, like pretty quickly, that's going to go up to 100,000 transactions per second. So scalability is the most important thing Ethereum needs right now. Combine that with the ETF, and we're going to see Ethereum and Ethereum related tokens go through the roof. Then there's discussions of doing a Solana ETF, and that's going to go through the roof. Once that happens, you're going to just have, hey, let's make an there's going to be all these research departments and all the banks and these ETFs researching crypto in general, and that's going to create demand for an ETF of tokens. Like right now, in our crypto group, we're using some exchanges for some tokens, other exchanges for other tokens, wherever we can. Soon there's going to be demand for one single spot where you can buy all the best researched tokens. Now, of course, in our crypto group, I can go token by token and which ones we recommend and why, but they will also follow Bitcoin and Ethereum upwards. And for every time Bitcoin goes up 100%, Ethereum might go 200%, and some other tokens out there might go up 1,000%. So the tokens will go up more because it's sort of like small caps to large caps.
Yeah.
2023, we saw Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, Tesla go up a ton, Nvidia, but the small caps kind of stayed behind. 2024 is probably going to be the year of the smaller stocks. Just like that, the crypto is going to work, but we're talking much greater percentages. Stock market returns 7% a year because it's all mature companies. Crypto is not a mature industry yet, so it's going to go up. Again, Bitcoin's going to go up hundreds of percent. Ethereum's going to go up hundreds of percent more. Some of these tokens are going to go up thousands of percent more, and it all starts with this ETF. So that's what it means for Ethereum and all the other tokens.
You've long held, and you've done this yourself. I mean, you moved out of Bitcoin and into Ethereum a year and a half ago,
Yeah.
and the basis of your reasoning is because Ethereum is so useful. It's so useful to developers and doing all these things in the real economy. And you talk about that in the early stage crypto investor group, which those readers are just love all the videos that you do and the calls that we do on that in that service. But the idea that Ethereum is going to become, is going to be the next target for an ETF is very interesting because it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to just stop right there. You could be a crypto fund for 6 or 7 or 10 of these coins, and they could, so there's a lot of opportunity. Bitcoin has now paved the road for just showing the roadmap for how this can take place going forward. And so anyway, I just wanted to mention that because that is a key point in early stage crypto investor is these smaller coins will move a lot faster, a lot higher because they're starting from such a small base and they're useful.
Absolutely. I mean, look, Ethereum, if you were to ask, well, what's the use case of Bitcoin? How am I going to use it? I'm fine using the dollar. What other use case there is? Well, people say it's a store of value, the way gold is. Like if you want, again, to repeat myself, if you want to save money, some people put part of their money in gold, some people might put part of their money in Bitcoin. That's called a store of value. Another use of money is that it's a unit of trade, is how it's called. I can use it to buy a cup of coffee. You can't do that with gold. It's only gold is only a store of value. You can do that with Bitcoin, but it's not like a at this point, it's not like a wide use case. If you ask me though, what's the use case for Ethereum? I can give you 1,000 use cases. And if you ask me what the use cases are of some of these other tokens, I can give you the use cases and tell you who the customers are, like which big companies are using it, these tokens, a huge amount. So the use cases are there in the crypto world. It's funny enough, except for maybe Bitcoin as anything other than store of value. Now, here's another thing. It's a little more complex, but the reason Bitcoin works as a currency and that no government is involved is it's what's called decentralized. Just like the internet is decentralized, like no government can really make the internet illegal, for instance. I mean, they can try, and China has made attempts, but they're meek attempts. It's very hard to do because when it's decentralized, you don't need anyone's, you know, the dollar is like printed by the U.S. government. It has to be a U.S. government dollar to spend it. Bitcoin is everybody can store it on different computers, and you don't need a bank, and you don't need to use a bank to make transactions. Like banking itself is going to be in trouble the way cable companies almost were in trouble when the internet started. The fact that Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other tokens are decentralized means you can do something called decentralized computing. So I can take a large problem like rendering a 3D video and chop it up into a million little videos and send them out to a million computers. Each one of them can work on the problem on their own and then send it back to the central computer, and which puts the video together. So like for instance, people at Disney use a token called Render to render 3D videos that does this decentralized computing. Well, guess what? AI AI is very hard to create a chat GPT. It requires, like chat GPT itself needed 3 supercomputers running for a year and a half nonstop to create a version that didn't even work yet. It needed another year and a half of people training it before it worked. So AI is very computationally intensive. What do you do when you have something that's very computationally intensive? You use more computers. So now there are tokens coming up that create decentralized computing platforms to very quickly, maybe even within days, make large language models even bigger than ChatGPT using the decentralized computing aspects of crypto technology. So this convergence of AI and crypto is happening fast. Meanwhile, what if I need a search engine on a blockchain that uses a form of AI, and those tokens are being made? There's AI running through all of these, or very important in AI. You know, there's lawsuits right now. The New York Times just sued OpenAI because some of ChatGPT's results come from articles in the New York Times, but they don't credit the New York Times. But now with crypto, you could build tokens which sort of tell you all the pieces of data that were used to create an answer in AI. That's going to be, you cannot do that without decentralized crypto technology. It's like the provenance of an art piece. You know who owned this art piece all the way back to Picasso, say. Now you're going to know all the data that and the sources when you get an answer on ChatGPT. It doesn't exist yet, but tokens are being made for this, and they use tokens like Ethereum or Solana to make these models. So that's the first place where we're going to see this decentralized aspects going to be the first place we see this convergence of crypto and AI. And it's going to be big. It's not a small problem. These are going to be big solutions. And you know, we talk about it a lot more on the crypto group, you know, obviously, but you know, needless to say, AI is going to drive crypto, and crypto is going to drive increases in AI because you're going to be able to make AI models faster. And so they're both industries are going to grow hand in hand together.
You leave this call, you buy some Bitcoin, you buy some Ethereum, you're not going to go wrong there.
I
But
don't
it,
think so. We can never say never, but I think
You're going to get
more,
exposed to the crypto market, is what I meant. Yeah.
yeah, and there's evidence that it's quickly going to get to 1 billion users, and now of course we have so many catalysts this year. This ETF was catalyst number one. Fortunately, we got the date absolutely correct, January 10th. And but then there's the Bitcoin halving coming up in April. There's also the Ethereum product upgrade, and there's also a lot of catalysts for smaller tokens. This is really important to me, and I'm really grateful for people listening to this. Have you taken a look outside of your house lately? This world is a gigantic pile of garbage right now. Like there's wars happening everywhere. No, the dollar, we're $34 trillion in debt in the US. Printed $4 trillion in 2020 alone. Like it's a mess. And you could argue all day with your friends about wars and other hot things that people argue about, but really it's important. Make your money, protect your family, and protect yourself. That's what I'm focused on.
Yeah. Amen to that, James. And well, again, I just wanted to say thank you very much for hopping on, covering the news of the day, probably the news of the year so far for sure. This has been a long time coming, and not without lots of stress with the SEC getting hacked and all this. Anyway,
What is
thank
it's you always events always happen that would make like the best movie. So the institution that was constantly screaming fraud and corruption, they're the ones that actually have all the, problems, not the crypto industry.
Yeah, that is pretty ironic.
Yeah.
Pretty ironic.
All right,
Well,
well,
again,
Doug, thanks for having me on. I'm glad we got a chance to get this message out quickly.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, James. And I guess we'll talk tomorrow because I'm sure there's going to be a lot going on. So I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right. And thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. And we'll talk again soon.